All right, so last week we learned from Mike Duggan that 12 years will have been enough in the Detroit mayor's office for him. He made that announcement. He still has a year to go, but let's talk about looking back, but let's also talk about what's ahead for these next 12 months. Mayor Mike Duggan, my guest this morning. Good to have you back on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with your announcement. It was interesting that you announced what you're not going to do, but you didn't announce what you are going to do. It was funny that ML Elric kind of took you to task, thinking you were double dipping a little bit, because reporters were there for this and they'll be back when you announce what you're going to do next.
So I had a day to talk to the city employees. Those 9,000 employees who went with us from bankruptcy and pay cuts and pension cuts and health care cuts. And I felt like I owed it to the employees to thank them for what they'd done and let them know about the plans for the city, and to give candidates for mayor a full year to go out and get known. So that's the reason I did it. I think you saw from the size of the crowd that the employees understood that I was talking to them. And I understand media people want me to say what they want me to say, but yesterday was a day about employees.
Yeah, I hear you. It was interesting. When you first ran for mayor, you said that you wanted to be judged by whether or not the city's population was growing. I think it took you longer to get to there than you wanted. I think you also dispute whether or not the census is right. But does that boil down to really why you think this is a good time to move
You know,
on?
I would not have left until I made that. That was the goal, because I really think that's the ultimate test. And the fact that we started winning court rulings, so the Census Bureau had to start counting people, I have no doubt we were gaining 2 years earlier. But until it's officially announced by the Census Bureau, nobody really knows. So I felt like that was a piece. But, you know, we were talking last night, and there was a point at which I was negotiating with the Pistons to come back to Detroit. I thought that would bring all concerts, all sports entertainment downtown. If we could just do that, that'd be the biggest deal ever. Then in a matter of months, I'm with Sergio Marchione, and we're talking about a Chrysler Jeep assembly plant. And then I got Bill Ford and Matt Maroon, and we're talking about a train station. And it was like we went from, if we could just get this one done, it would be huge for the city. And at the end of the day, and I said this to the team, you know, remember when Mary Barra announced she was closing the Detroit Hamtramck plant? And now there's 4,500 people working there because we convinced them to move the electric vehicles in. And I took the time for a lot of staff to say, you know, you worked around the clock on deals. Each one of these we thought was huge. When you put them all together, it took all of it to change the trajectory of the city.
You know all of this stuff better than anybody else, and yet I also think that it can be difficult to be in the middle of it and really have a sense of what it all means together. Do you think you've got a pretty fair sense of your own of what these 11 years have been?
You know, one of the funniest.
Or is legacy going to be written by others?
Yeah, one of the funniest was I got a phone call from Kwame Kilpatrick the week he got out of prison. And he says, I'm driving around Detroit. When did all this happen? And so a guy who had been gone for 8 years who knew the city well, actually that's what hit me, was he couldn't believe the transformation. But yeah, every Saturday or Sunday morning I drive the neighborhoods, and to see neighborhoods that were forgotten, where people are working on fixing up their houses. It's not the city doing it now. The property values have come back. The parks are back. People want to be there. It is powerful to drive down those streets, remember what they looked like 8-10 years ago.
What have been your biggest frustrations? I know the land bank, you feel like you got way out in front and moved far too quickly and got in all kinds of trouble with the land bank. But what's been your biggest frustration that still exists today with a year to go? You know, I would say the thing that I'm not as happy with myself as I should be is the Detroit Promise. We now have $9 million a year. I took 10 years ago and passed something that says we'll take a little bit of the growth in the tax revenues and provide scholarships to high school students from Detroit. Well, of course, property values exploded, and that few $100,000 is now $9 million a year. This week, I was with a high school group saying, how many of you know about the Detroit Promise? And a quarter of the kids, even despite the ads, didn't know. We're not doing a good enough job of getting to parents and kids and saying to 10 years old, 12 years old, your college is guaranteed for you. 2 years or 4 years, it is guaranteed for you if you live in Detroit and graduate from Detroit High School because you're in the city. And I think that could shape
decision-making on the part of kids, on the part of families, even on the part of where to live. And I think if I'm going to fix something in the next year, I am going to make sure everybody understands. As Kalamazoo does, you know, every kid in Kalamazoo knows they're going to college because of Kalamazoo Promise. The Detroit Promise is every bit as good, and we need to get that better known.
In fact, you've talked about our biggest export, unfortunately, has been our young people, which is a terrible thing.
It is. Yeah. It doesn't matter where I go, and you know, and I've recruited for our summer interns at the HBCUs around the country, and to have a kid at Morehouse or at Spelman say, my goal growing up in Detroit was to study hard to get out. I think we're changing that now. But this whole state's main export is our young people.
You worked really hard to change, to fight to change no fault. And we are no longer the state with the highest priced insurance. We're now 49th. Why hasn't it worked better?
So,
and what else can we do about it?
So what I did on no fault was take out the ridiculous double payments on the PIP. People on Medicare were paying $1,000 a year for health insurance on their car insurance when they already had Medicare. We got that opt-out. And people who have insurance through their employer, we got that opt-out. And that was a major step in the right direction. And it was a big part of the discrepancy between the city and the suburbs. There are a lot more things that could be done. But we
clearly, because we're still ridiculously expensive.
We're still high. But I accomplished what I wanted in getting basically a $1,000 cut to the people who were double paying on the PIP insurance. And that was statewide. But it hit Detroiters especially hard.
You are announcing your departure right as we were watching a change at the police department. James White, I think by almost all accounts, has had quite a run here as police chief. Crime has been down, especially over the last, going back to last summer. But talk to me a little bit about what you feel like where we are on safety in the city and now transitioning to somebody else in the department.
If you're building a strong team, you have somebody ready to go. And Todd Bettison was James White's #2 for 6 months. Then I took him as deputy mayor, where he's been straightening out the fire department, the bus system, et cetera, and has really become very good at detailed administration. But when Chief White came to me and said, my dream is to run the mental health agency, I said, you have my full support. And we had somebody ready to go. And I think Chief Bettison is going to do extremely well. And he's got the metrics up on the board every week at Cabinet. And he knows his job is homicide rate and shooting rate better be below Chief White's record.
It's funny that you would say when you're running a good team, you have somebody ready to go. And now here you are leaving. And I'm not sure I feel like you have sort of shaped a successor. I think you feel confident. You said the other day you feel confident in what's there. But
you know,
talk about the succession.
I don't think the voters of Detroit want the mayor to pick their successors. They want to pick their own leader. So I never thought it was my job. Coleman Young wasn't able to pick a successor. Dennis Archer wasn't able to pick a successor. I never.
Well, Dennis Archer caught everybody off guard when he left.
Right, but I never for a second thought I am going to pick the person that's going to replace me. What I did want to do is have enough progress in the city that there would be a lot of talent develop and there'd be a lot of choices, and the next mayor doesn't come in with 47,000 abandoned houses, they come in with 3,000. That's a whole different world. The next mayor doesn't come in with massive deficits, comes with $500 million in reserves and a strong financial position. And we do have, I think, several strong candidates, and I think the public needs the opportunity to get to know them over the next year. But I think the city's going to be just fine.
Can you see yourself in a position of eventually endorsing a candidate?
Maybe. Maybe at this point, I haven't decided who I'm voting for.
Okay.
So, but I think, it's the way it should be at this point. I'm not sure all the candidates are in yet, but we're going to watch the candidates develop. I do think you're going to see candidates run campaigns to unite the city. I don't think you're going to see the divisive us versus them that Detroiters knew for many years. And I think somebody who unites the city and who has the courage to tell people the truth is going to do fine.
Lastly, you pointed to some of the big exciting things that are happening right now, obviously, but we also have some enormous challenges trying to figure out I-375, trying to figure out what's going to happen with the RenCen. Give me your priority or priorities really quickly for you.
Well, I think
I-375,
MDOT has got a design, it's going to move forward, and everything else is noise. The question is, what do you do? We are going to create a block almost a half a mile long of new downtown. It'll be some of the most valuable real estate anywhere in America. And our planning department is working now. It'll be on the Lafayette Park side. So I'm assuming we're going to see apartments and mixed use. But that's a process we're going to go through. And then there needs to be a conversation for people who were pushed out without compensation, the renters primarily, in the 50s and 60s. And is there a way that those renters who were never compensated should get some? Those are conversations we're going to have. But I think we're going to see 375 move forward just fine.
Good deal. You don't want to announce for governor right now because I'm leaving. I know. I'd hate to miss that.
Well, I was waiting to see what your next announcement was. So I don't want to be running against you.
Fair. I think there's very little. I think you're okay. You'll be all right. Mayor, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here.
All right.
We'll bring our roundtable in right after this. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.